Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Lewis.
Welcome to the Rangers journey.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob, and you are tuning in to your weekly dose of the Rangers news here at the Rangers Journal. We have three distinguished guests today joining me this afternoon. We have Jack. How are you this afternoon, Jack?
Yep, good. Looking forward to the game tomorrow. A bit of an unusual kick-off time, bit of a longer wait, but looking forward to it.
Good. Cammy, stalwart of the news show on the Friday afternoons. How are you, sir?
I've not been on for a while, but like Jack says, looking forward to a Saturday kick-off, albeit a later kick-off time, so there's going to be a lot of time to kick about. But tomorrow's my daughter's 11th birthday, so it's busy, and then hopefully get to Ibrox and pick up another 3 points. But looking forward to talking all things Rangers.
Good, excellent. And last but not by no means least, Billy, how are you this afternoon?
Good, feeling a lot better for being branded distinguished. That's going in my CV, I can tell you. Just again, the season that keeps looking like it's on, then it's off, then it's on again. It's just nice to have something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all looking forward to the game tomorrow, albeit a slightly later kickoff than our usual 3 p.m. Start. What we'll do is I'll get the business out the way, and then we can focus on the football chat. So we are proudly sponsored by the Bluebells Bar in Puerto del Carmen in Lanzarote. This is the number one destination in Lanzarote for Rangers fans to go to. If you're lucky enough to go to Lanzarote on holiday, please make sure you visit Kenny and the team at the bar. They will certainly make sure you're well looked after. They show live football, more especially the Rangers games, and they do tend to show, as far as I'm led to believe, the odd journal podcast. So please keep your eyes open for that if you're over there. Please give them a shout if you're out there and let us know if you've been. It's certainly worthwhile letting us know. So thank you for the Bluebells Bar for sponsoring the team here. As you'll also see behind me, or to my left, the merch QR code for the Etsy shop. As you can see, I'm proudly sponsored today by the T-shirt with the Rangers Journal logo on it. If you do fancy picking yourself up a bit of merch, then please head over to the shop and help us out. That's all the admin out the way. Let's focus on the good stuff, which is the football. We have had our press conferences this morning from both the manager and Connor Barron, who I'm glad to see back in the squad and hopefully in the first team come Saturday afternoon. We'll touch on that first, and we'll maybe touch back on the Simon game at the end of last week as well. But Jack, I'll come to you first. Have you had a chance to listen over the manager's press conference this morning? And I'm sure there's certainly a couple of things that I'm sure you'd like to raise from that.
Yeah, so obviously I heard news during the week also about Derek Cornelius being told to train with the youths. Now, I got a bit of abuse on this, and I will hold my hands up in a minute. My wording was maybe a bit sensationalist. It wasn't quite a banishment, so I will hold my hands up to that. But I got a bit of stick for it, saying I was, talking at my backside. But yeah, so everything sort of came out gradually. Obviously, I kind of got rumours that Sports Science weren't happy with him. Obviously, he's maybe out for 2 months from November. I came back in January after his Christmas away. Sports Science weren't happy with sort of the condition he was in. And then obviously this is rumbled on. Like I said, he was maybe out for 2 months, and we're now going on, 4 or 5 months. He's obviously been training for a few weeks, but yeah, something seems to have happened because he was told to train with the youth team. Now, normally a player playing with the youth teams on his recovery is quite normal, but the whole situation regarding him being sort of in training with them seemed to me to strike like maybe something's gone behind the scenes. I didn't have any information on what exactly went down, but Jesse Marsh made comments that Danny Rule and Derek Cornelius and Cornelius' agents had some communication with each other that, you know, looks like it went sideways. Jesse Marsh is saying that's on him, lost in translation, which I don't really get considering they all speak good English. I know it's not Danny Rule's first language, but he's still very fluent, clearly, with all his press conferences and everything. And then also Danny Rule today came out and said he implied a lot of things without actually saying much. He confirmed also Derek Cornelius had been allowed to leave early, which suggests to me that, because look, we get an injury tomorrow in the warm-up, Derek Cornelius isn't there to fill in the bench, you know what I mean? So it's going to leave us light. So it just looks as if he's not in the manager's plans. He did say they would have a talk when he came back. So we'll see how that goes. But normally when this sort of thing happens, it is pretty much the end. I think maybe just because of how light we are at centre-back, he's leaving the option open. Obviously, John Souttar's form's been poor. One comment I would like to address, though, because I'll probably will get called out on it, is Danny Rule said he was training with the first team and then later individually. Technically, that is true. He was training with the first team and then doing some individual stuff, and then he's been moved down to train with the youth team. But he hasn't actually had a session with the youth team yet. So technically what Danny Rowe's saying is true, but he has been assigned to the youth team. Obviously, that might never happen now. Danny Rowe's talked about conversations to be had when he comes back. That could very well happen. Things will get ironed out and he might get moved right back. But the situation, as I understand it right now, is his fitness has been a concern and he has been asked to train with the youth team and is not currently considered in the first team picture. And yeah, I kind of got a reputation for talking nonsense, for listening to someone who told me that Robbie Fowler had been sacked. That was wrong. Held my hands up to it, but I'm not really getting in a habit of just posting every single WhatsApp rumour out there. So yeah, I do trust where I've got this from. And like I said, it could be sorted out, but as of now, I don't see Derek Cornelius playing for Rangers again unless we have a serious sort of injury crisis at the back.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one, Jack. I think, you know, considering the manager's been asked on several occasions about, you know, several other players in the squad that have not been making the matchday squads and hasn't really been given, you know, he kind of gives vague updates here and there. It's certainly an interesting one that seems to have, you know, given us, I would say, some discussion in the WhatsApp group this week for sure. Billy, what's your take on the Derek Cornelius situation? Again, I felt when he first came in at the start of the season under Russell Martin, he seemed a relatively solid defender. I think, you know, he looked as if he was a left centre back and could cover the left back position, just due to the fact that, you know, Russell Martin made an absolute dog's dinner of signings in the summer with only a lone player as our left back for the first I say few months of the season. So yeah, what's your take on Derek Cornelius? Do you think he should be, you know, brought back into the first team, or do you think we should just you know, cut ties once the loan finishes?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt, like Jack says, that we are not signing Derek Cornelius without wanting to say I told you so, because I wasn't predicting this would happen. But when he came in, I did have some concerns about his CV, as it were. I know the nature of modern football is people bounce about a lot, and you know, if you have a good season, your club may want to cash in and punt you for a profit. But his CV was all 28 games, 35 games, 42, 37, 23. You know, okay, he's gone from Malmo to Marseille, so he's playing at decent levels. But the thing that I said when he came in is, he never seemed to be a player that made himself indispensable at clubs. He came in, he did a job, he moved on, and I had a suspicion that with that profile, that might be what he did for Rangers. You know, he'd come in for the season, you know, he'd help us out when we needed that cover at left back and also in the centre of the defence, and then he'd go on. You do wonder, though, when you start to see something like this, is there a reason why he's bounced about? Is he someone who has made a career in football because he's quite good at football, but maybe doesn't have that extra something? Because I would have thought, as a professional footballer, especially with his background, he's not going to have the chance to compete for shiny things that often in his career. He finds himself in a situation where, you know, he could come. He's played a few games early on. He could be in the run into a title decider. If that doesn't get your juices going as a professional footballer, you have to wonder if you can't stay in shape when you're playing at a big club and you're in a title fight. You know, what's that all about? And I think we were talking in the pre-match, you're not wanting to steal Cammy's thunder, but like, you know, there is the question about the way Danny Rule was talking about conversations he'd had with the Canadian manager. You know, is there a chance that Cornelius is maybe looking at Rangers, looking at the World Cup and deciding that Rangers are not a priority, which I always think is a very poor way for a professional to go about their business. But you see people, you know, like, don't get me started on Aaron Ramsey. That name like haunts my nightmares for a variety of reasons. But you get that sort of player who almost sees like club football not as an inconvenience, but as a necessary evil. So I'm not. We don't know with Derek Cornelius. Jack might know because it sounds like he's got the inside track, and I have a deep suspicion he knows more than he's telling us out of professionalism. But yeah, that's exactly what someone that knew more would say, Jack.
No, I actually wish I did know what was going on, but I just kind of get told, look, I can't. I just kind of got the vague description that's out there, because also I don't want to kind of go out, get everything and give away what's going on and then never get told anything else again. It's about kind of, yeah, I wish I knew more, but it's all a bit vague. There is an issue, but I've got no idea what the issue is.
Yeah, and we're left sort of piecing it together from the conversation with the manager and the fact that Danny Rule seems a really smart communicator. I think he uses his English as a second language thing relatively skillfully. And I think, you know, the dropped in references to conversations with the national manager are breadcrumbs maybe leading in that direction and maybe hinting that his focus isn't fully on Rangers. But I feel a bit bad getting into that because Cammy was the one that actually flagged it up. So I'm gonna maybe let that go to Cammy rather than just nick the stuff he was saying in the pre-match or pre-pod.
Yeah, we'll bring Cammy in on that one. I think, you know, there's certainly, you know, as we've kind of touched on, you know, I say rumours after the winter break, after, you know, that kind of winter period that he come back overweight or allegedly overweight, which I think has probably played its part in him not being considered for any of the squads, you know, for the last few months. So it's certainly been an interesting one, Cammy, and obviously let you come in and have your say on what you think of what the comments the manager made in the press conference, and, you know, kind of what Jesse Marsh has also come out and said as the Canadian manager.
I just think it's something that hasn't just happened. It's built over a period of time. His injury seemed to last a heck of a lot longer than any of us expected. He was, you know, almost just forgotten about because wasn't brought up in press conferences. I genuinely do believe that his priority has been the national team, the World Cup, although what I would say is to put yourself in the best position to play in the World Cup for the national team is be involved in football and play games. He's not kicked a ball in 2026, bar maybe a bounce game at Auchenhowie, which I could be right or wrong on that one, but it's very strange. I'm just glad that this wasn't a Russell Martin signing where he gave him a 4-year contract back in. Him and Kevin Thelwell gave him a 4-year contract back in August, and were saddled with him with a £1 million a year contract. It's one of those. He showed early signs of promise. He's picked up the injury. Manny Fernandez has come in, made that left-sided centre half his own. I don't think, I'll echo Jack's thoughts, I don't think he'll play for Rangers again. I think if anybody gets injured, Souttar's essentially your third pick. I think Tav would play centre half. I think Dujon Sterling would play centre half. So I think John Brown would probably get a shout before Derek Cornelius now, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just one of those. I don't think we'll ever know the full story of what's went on, but it's not something that's just suddenly appeared over the last few days when Jack's been getting grief. I sat in front of Jack for years, so I knew that he spoke nonsense long before everybody else. No, seriously, it's just one of these things. It's 8 games to go. He'll go back to his parent club and we move on from it. But it's just one of these things. Breakdown in relationships for a variety of reasons happen in the workplace, and they happen in football clubs, and I think that's just what's happened here.
Yeah, it certainly, certainly seems to be the case, Cammy. I think that, as I said, and I think we've all touched on, he came in and showed some good, he seemed to be a relatively robust, centre back, but maybe just to touch on, we'll maybe come back to the press conference in a moment, but just to touch on one of the comments you said about, Manny Fernandes, the fact that Manny Fernandes has come in, he's now been called up to the national team this week for Nigeria, which again just shows his progression from the start of the season, when I think we were all, again, very unsure of why we had brought, I think it was League One Peterborough are in, a League One defender in for £3.5 million, and he's certainly shown that, and there certainly seems to be a lot of interest in him. Even from the moment he played in the friendlies in the summer, his progression this season has been, I say, a joy to behold. He certainly, as you said, made that left centre half position his own, and I do think, just as you said, that with Cornelius likely to leave in the summer, if we can go and find someone of a similar stature to come in, hopefully beside the likes of Fernandes and Romans, then we're hopefully doing very well with the recruitment process. But yeah, maybe just come back to yourself, Cammy, on Manny Fernandes. What have your thoughts been on the fact that he's been called up to the national team this week?
It certainly helps with regard to his transfer valuation. That's him capped. I know we're all obsessed with the trading model and what have you. I've been reading bits and pieces, but it's reward for excellent performance. He's one of these guys that has improved the more he's played. He shows leadership. I mean, I think he's 24. He isn't just a young guy, but he shows leadership. He's no scared. There's wee elements of his game that are still need a bit of polish, but he, for me, is our player of the year, and that says it all. I think that since November time when he came into the team, I think he's just improved game on game and has been excellent. So yeah, Nigeria, I just hope, as we always do when players go off on international duty, they come back, they do their stuff, and they come back in one piece for the Rangers games that we've got ahead. But yeah, I'm really pleased for him. Comes across as a good character. Good rewards. Manny Fernandes and Calvin Bassey playing in the same teams. I don't think anybody would have predicted that 6 months ago. But it's a signing, $3.5 million. We're going to make a hefty profit on when he does go. I did read Chris Jack talking that he wants Rangers. I think there's no rush to sell him. We have, I think, an option on him. I think he's tied to 2029, 2030. So there's no, unless a club comes in and slaps 30 million on the table this summer, I don't think there's any rush for us to, because I think he is only going to get better. And then you hope that he doesn't get his head turned if there is interest from Bayern Munich or Chelsea or whoever it may be. But yeah, he's been great, and I'm delighted for him that he's done that. I just hope he's saved a few goals for the last 8 games of the season, because it's dried up a wee bit for him in front of goal in recent weeks. But yeah, he's been excellent. Big Fernandes. I'm very, very surprised how it's panned out.
Yeah, same, Cammy. I think he's, again, I think we were all, probably thinking that it would be Suter and Jiga as the kind of main partnership at the start of the season, but obviously all 3 centre halves have been up and down in terms of their form. Billy, what about yourself? What do you think of Manny Fernandez and his call up to Nigeria? Do you think that, again, just as Cammy touched on, adds an extra zero to his value? If there's any kind of concrete interest in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice when you actually see the transfer system, the data model, whatever you want to look at it working. I think whoever identified him, we want to have a serious think about bringing him in at Rangers, though, because like we could do with someone oversee player recruitment. Was it a Keith Elwell who brought Manny Fernandez in? Because I noticed he got a pretty decent job down in England, and I wonder, we look at things as fans, and Kevin Thelwell was undoubtedly like a bit of a disaster, but if he wants to get a job, he can actually point to some things that he's done that, a future employer would look at how Fernandez has come along, Chermiti, how he's developed in the big games, and would see a reasonable case for hiring him. I mean, we all know that it wasn't going to work because he also hired Russell Martin, and Russell Martin was not going to develop a winning Rangers team. Fernandez is going to be an interesting one in the summer because it'll be maybe a sort of slight bellwether of where the 49ers are at mentally. They want to make money. They have shown at Leeds that they don't care about fan opinion. If they think that there is a peak time to sell a player, he gets sold. As Rangers fans, we're looking at it, and I think Cammy's bang on. I think Fernandez has developed so well. Maybe not quite as stratospherically as a Calvin Bassey, but it's kind of getting into that territory in terms of seeing someone almost like week by week develop and grow into the shirt. So there's definitely, I think he could do with another year's development at Rangers, during which he'd get more European experience, he'd be in a more settled team, and he hopefully would add to his value. Will be an interesting test of the 49ers if someone, like Cammy's talking about like 30 million bids. That's kind of irresistible for a Scottish club. But if a bid of 15 or 20 came in, would the 49ers be tempted at that point? That would be interesting to see. And it's a final point, actually. I like what Cammy does. This sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not actually. It's like the Scottish press and certain placemen in the Scottish press have got a set model that we see that whenever a Celtic player is coming up for sale, he is absolutely hyped to the nth degree. When a Rangers player comes up for sale, actually it tends to be sort of like damped down. So you even have like the Billy Dodds who just don't get me started, Billy Dodds. When we were talking about player sales last year, he was talking down the value of players. And that's a guy who was working there up until a couple of months previously. I like the idea of talking about a Fernandez at Bayern or Chelsea because you could see it. Like Celtic have made more ridiculous statements. Like Fernandez has got that sort of profile. You could see him at a Chelsea or a Bayern. I hope he doesn't go. I hope he's here for another year. But it'll be interesting. And I think a lot might depend on how the next 8 games go. Because, as champions strolling into the Champions League, if Panathinaikos don't take that slot, he's going to get hell of experience next season. If we don't win and we're going into Europa or something like that, then maybe a move to a Big 5 league might look more tempting to him. So all back into the great unknowns of the next 8 games.
Yeah, you certainly touched on a good point there, Billy, in that if we manage to win our next 8 cup finals, as the manager keeps saying, or we could, if we go into the summer as champions and have that Champions League football, hopefully, if everything, if things fall our way elsewhere, if he comes back, it certainly improves his profile as well as the profile of the club. Jack, what do you think? Do you think he'll come in this, come back in the summer as our first choice centre back? Potential of Champions League football that then leaves the opportunity open in the future. As Cammy and Billy have both touched on, that could add an extra 5-10 million onto his price tag. That if he again wins silverware with us over the next year to 18 months, I certainly don't think there'll be a lack of interest in him. What's your thoughts on Manny Fernandes?
It reminds me a lot. I know they're completely different players, position style-wise, to the Hamza Egeman situation. Where last year we were all saying, yeah, we could get, what was it we eventually got from this summer? About, was it 14 million, 12 million we got from this summer?
Yeah, 12. I think it was around 12. Yeah.
12. We were all saying, yep, we could easily get that in the summer. But if we keep him another year, we could get 20, 25. And that was also a topic about Morelos years ago. But Fernandes falls into a summer category. I think we could do well. I think we could get a very good fee for him in the summer, 15 million. But like you guys said, say we do go into the Champions League, and obviously he's getting our national cap now, wins the league. You could be looking at, 20, 25 million. I don't quite think we'll get 30 million for a defender, just because of the position the league he plays in. But I think 20 odd million after another year would be very reasonable. Full international, he could end up going to whatever tournament is going on. I don't know the African Cup of Nations timeline, but he could play plenty of games for them. I think the big thing is now the new ownership, and I know we ended up selling Egeman, but I think that is more down to the player basically forced it rather than anything. And Manny doesn't seem to have any sort of attitude issues. He seems happy to be here. You see his brother posting about how happy he is on his TikTok all the time. I think another year would be better. I think now if he leaves, you could see him maybe going to Fulham or someone around that level. So I think in our year, you could see him making a bigger move. Maybe not quite to an Arsenal or a Man City or something like that, but I could definitely see him going to a Newcastle or maybe even Chelsea, because they like signing their sort of project players. I think to sum up, I think in our year would be the best thing for him, but it just kind of depends on how the summer goes.
Yeah, I certainly think, just as we've all touched on, the next 8 games are so pivotal for not only the club as a whole in terms of ending the season with, on a positive, with hopefully with some silverware. Obviously then plays into the summer transfer window where we're going to be playing football in Europe. So yeah, again, everything, if he keeps his form up after the international break, then we'll certainly I don't think we'll lose too many games based on his current form, but we'll maybe just head back into the press conference.
Bob, can I just quickly on that one? For me, there's parallels with, I'm not comparing players. When Celtic sold Virgil van Dijk to Southampton, I think they sold him for, say, 13 million. And then obviously, what happened after that? Went to Liverpool for 75 million. But Celtic included a sell-on. We're in a position where Peterborough have sold Manny Fernandes to us, and they have a significant sell-on, which we don't know how much that sell-on is. So that's going to be a factor in the fee that we ask or whatever. But I think it's important that if and when he does leave Rangers, that we are similarly clever with regard to that we stick a sell on. So we might accept 18 million just for a figure. But if he goes to Fulham and then Man United sign him for 85 million, we've stuck a 15% sell on any profit. So we actually gain in due course. So I just think that when Manny Fernandes does leave Rangers, whether it's this summer or a year on, it won't be his last move, because I genuinely think he has got growth that he could play at a Chelsea. I watched the English Premier League and I watched some of the centre halves that Chelsea have got playing, and he's certainly more than good enough to play in that Chelsea defence as it stands. So it was just to talk about sell-on as much as anything. I think that's going to be a factor moving forward.
Sure. No, I agree, Cammy. I think it's certainly, with the new ownership in place, that they would hopefully have that kind of business acumen to, stick a sell-on clause in, as and when they do accept a bid for him, or any of the other, any other players in the squad. I know that might sound far-fetched for some of them, the way they're playing at the moment, but Yeah, I would agree on that point of trying to kind of box clever, as you say. Not only can he, if he goes to a mid-table, lower end Premier League team, that, as you say, could then have further improvement or further progress to go higher up in the game, and hopefully we can benefit in the long term on that. But say maybe just touching back on the press conference this morning, he did mention a couple of other players. The fact that Dio had been training this week, despite the concern, I think it was around a dislocated shoulder, was obviously a positive to hear. But the fact that I believe it was Skov Olsen has been ill all week, he's likely to be out, and also, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong or keep me on the right track, I think it was Mikey Moore and Romans had both had issues. Obviously, we've seen the strapping last week in Paisley get for tour, so maybe that's just been a reaction from that game. But maybe come to yourself, Jack. Obviously, with the fact that the likes of Skov is unlikely to play this weekend, as well as Moore, does that then give an opportunity to the likes of Gassama and Ant-Man to come in and try and stake a claim for those places for the last 7 or 8 games of the season?
I think Gassama's chances of being gone, if I was in charge, I'd be kind of using him as that impact player, where I think he's been since that initial sort of burst. I think he's been better used as an impact player. We've seen that against Hearts. Obviously, when we beat them at Ibrox, he came on and had an impact at the end of the game. I'd be looking to maybe give the start to Ant-Man. I think Gassama's had a few chances and he's clearly out of confidence, right? There is talent there. We've seen that. It's just he's struggling. He's really struggling. So on that right flank, I'd be tempted to go with Ant-Man. However, obviously Moore looks as if he's going to be a doubt. I wouldn't be opposed to Gassama starting out on the left, because I feel he's done his best work out there and might give him a chance to kind of boost that confidence. Just thinking about our kind of other options, I wouldn't really want to see Asgard out there. Bainami, I don't know, he just doesn't seem overly trusted by Danny Rowe. So your only real other option is Rabbi Matondo. I mean, Rowe hasn't exactly frozen Matondo out, right? We all have our thoughts on him. We all think he's, a chancer and guff. But Rowe has used him in the cup games, whereas if he was completely persona non grata, he would not even be used then. So it genuinely wouldn't surprise me to see Rabbi Matondo in the squad at the weekend. If all the players mentioned as doubts are out, I would probably go with Ant-Man on the right, Gassama on the left. But in terms of backup options, you're really looking at Bairami filling in or Matondo. So you're kind of limited to your option out there, and it kind of just goes back to the recruitment on stuff like that. We didn't really get what we needed totally out there, and we can make the case for Finlay Curtis Grant and loan. Look, we could be using them now, but I think long term we'll see more benefit from these 6 months of playing regular than we would for him filling in here and there for us in this title running, as frustrating as it is at the moment.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. Again, we can obviously touch on Finlay as well. With his good news this week, being called up into the senior Scotland squad for the friendlies. Billy, I could see you kind of bristled when Jack mentioned Rabbi Matondo. Do you think that I was going to say the Welsh Wizard, he's maybe not been
Matondo Mania.
The Matondo Mania. Do you think Matondo Mania will be released between now and the end of the season? Do you think we'll see him back in a Rangers top?
Well, just to clarify, I wasn't bristling. I was actually just going, "Oh, aye, him, yeah," because I'd heard he was back in the Welsh squad, but honestly, that's the first time I'd thought about him in quite a while. Rabbi Matondo weirdly could actually be a useful curveball. It's 8 games. Probably longer than he can stay fit for. But in those 8 games, could you throw him in for 2 or 3 matches, if he's fit? We've seen, the kind of goals he scored against the likes of Celtic. So he's got a goal in him. If his hammies will hold out for 2 or 3 matches, then he's useful. And could he be the guy to just freshen things up for a game or two while you're trying to get, you're trying to get Gissimus kind of confidence back or decide what to do with Ant-Man. What I would say about Jerry Gassama is like he gets a lot of flack. The managers clearly like what he brings to the team, and I'm starting to wonder because like everyone makes the point that he's way better coming in off the left than he is on the right. So we kind of rail week in week out about why does Danny Rule use him on the right? Well, Danny Rule seems like quite smart about football, so I doubt he's doing it not having worked out that he's better on the left. And I sometimes wonder because if you actually look at our forum before we started, like, sort of like mucking about with the attacking options, it was kind of better. It's really since we started playing around with that after January that we've dropped more points. And I wonder that there's a phrase that I heard that used to resonate about Ryan Kent, and he used to drive us up the pitch. He used to do a job in a certain area. And a lot of the time, people would criticise his productivity, quite rightly. He didn't score enough goals. He didn't have enough assists. But I've often wondered, is he the kind of guy who makes chances to make chances? Like, he'll drive you up the pitch 30 or 40 yards. He might not be the guy who then kind of like gets in behind and cuts back, but he gets the whole team up the pitch and then someone else can kind of like take over a Mikey Moore or whatever. So I think Gassama's still got a part to play. His confidence does look a bit short. So to circle back to Rabbi Matondo, the frustration with Rabbi Matondo is what he can do and what will inevitably happen. We know that, he's had that pace. We know that he's got a finish in him. He can be quite exciting, but his body's going to break down. And like it's quite funny. Like I think like a guff chancer, as I think Jack sort of like Christendom. I can understand why. I also have a bit of sympathy for Rabbi Matondo because as a professional footballer, you must get to a point where your body keeps breaking down, where you realise you're toast and that you've hit the level that you're going to get to. And it must be kind of frustrating as a pro to have that realisation as well. To answer your question, he could. Like Danny Rill's smart enough that he could be a guy that you bring in 2 or 3 games and he has an impact. You wouldn't bet the mortgage on it just because, past performance is your best guide to future sort of like injury breakdowns. But I wouldn't rule him out. So definitely not bristling. More like sort of like having flashbacks to previous performances and disappearances of Rabbi Matondo.
Sure. And I think it's certainly going to be an interesting one. I think I could see Cammy was holding his cards pretty close to his chest there when Matondo was mentioned about getting into the starting lineup. I think maybe the question for you, Cammy, is
what have I started?
Probably the question I'll maybe try and pivot slightly in that. Do you think the last 8 games will give an opportunity to any of the French players, considering we do seem to pick up a lot of injuries this time of year. The last couple of seasons we've kind of seen that the cost of the performances based on having our best players available. So do you think there is an opportunity under the management team to see maybe not just Matondo but as we kind of touched on Bayrami, Ant-Man, the guy, even Asgard. I know Asgard's not really been playing a lot recently as well. Do you think these guys will maybe get an opportunity based on the kind of current the current state of injuries? I know that there's only 2 or 3, but we certainly obviously don't want to see many more than that occur.
I think the injuries, who's available, is the issue. I think Rabbi Matondo only gets involved if we're very much down to the bare bones. I would look at Ant-Man off the left. There was early positive signs, Ant-Man off the left when him and Romans were linking well, and then he picked up an injury off the back of that. So Matondo for me is very Gassama-like. He's an impact player. Best played when the game stretched last 20 minutes, and I think that's when he's been available in his Rangers career, that's been his best football, is the last 15-20 minutes. But I'm interested by the manager sort of been a bit he's been a bit cagey in his press conferences, I think, recently. I don't think he's been quite as open he speaks about Skov Olsen being ill this week. Now, this is Friday. He might have been ill on Monday and Tuesday, and they might have had a day off on Wednesday, and he's trained Thursday and Friday. We don't know. The small problem, Tor Romans had the small problem after the cup tie against Celtic, didn't train until the day before the game. So we're in that sort of, we're all speculating on the basis of small problem, etc., etc. We don't, that's, unless we know whether they've been on the grass and on the training pitch the last couple of days. If that is the case, I would expect both players to play because we're going into an international break. If you can get 60 to 70 minutes out of Romans and get the same out of Mikey Moore, put the game to bed, and then you can take them off, then I think if assuming they've trained and they're fit enough to start, I think both players will start, but it depends on the severity of the injury, the severity of the illness. You know, I always revert back to my wee boy. Callum was ill for 4 days last week, but he was fit to play on Saturday morning. So you just don't know. You don't know because he's made a statement about illness, and it could just be he's had a wee bit of a cold or he's had sickness at the start of the week, and he's it's a nice sunny day outside. He's been back training, sort of thing. So I think we're in a position now. We're playing week to week. Unless somebody's leg's hanging off, I think a lot of them are going to play through niggly wee injuries. And I think that's what Romans done last week at Paisley. I think Mikey Moore has been carrying an injury for a number of weeks as well. That's why he got taken off, I believe, in the Celtic Cup tie, because his minutes have been managed, etc. And I think Connor Barron there in the comments is spot on. You're not giving Stephen Robinson any ideas, because he's gone, all right, Mikey Moore's no fit. I wonder what Rangers will do. It's not just obvious that those 11 players are going to play, and I think there's an element of that. We are at the business end of the season, so I think we're all speculating, but I think that if both players have trained, if all three players have trained Thursday, Friday, I would expect them all to be in the squad tomorrow, and certainly two of them I expect to start.
Yeah, I can't kind of disagree with that. Kind of think, it's, the manager has been quite astute recently. I think, even the game from the weekend, I think he kind of utilised the squad more than he has done in the previous, kind of 2 or 3 games. So yeah, I think he has to try and go with his best or strongest starting lineup come Saturday afternoon. Jack, maybe come back to you. Just looking back through a couple of other notes from the press conference, and I know there was a couple of comments made both about Nadiri and also the thoughts about Aberdeen and Skov Olsen as well. So maybe just touch on Nadiri just for a wee point. Obviously, he's not scored a league goal since he's come in, but the manager was saying he's been really great in his work effort. And I know that the guys, I know Scotty and Doug covered him earlier in the week on one of the pods. So if you've not seen that, please go and check that out on our YouTube channel. I think it was certainly a good watch in terms of been through the stats, but maybe just again pressing the point home of Nadiri had come in January, obviously for slightly more money than what we would have likely paid for him in the summer. I feel as if he has shown good promise, Jack, but again we're hoping that somebody would come in, hit the ground running, and get us the goals to get us over the line, and he's not quite done that just yet. So what do you think he kind of needs to do, or do you think the manager needs to change the system to get the best out of him?
I think he works well on the front too. I feel like he does a lot of the sort of donkey work well for Trimiti. I would like to see him and Miovski up front. I think we've seen it in the cup game against Queen's Park, where Miovski obviously got a hat-trick, Nadiri get the goal. I would like to see the two of them tried together, because I just feel like Trimiti and Nadiri are very similar. They're both trying to do a lot of the same things. Whereas Miovski is more of a foil for the two of them. But yeah, on that point, I don't want to go too far off the way. Miovski just seems way down in Danny Rowe's estimations. I think had he not played for Girona a couple of games at the start of the season, we'd have probably seen him go out loan in January. His Macedonia manager, Sidlowski, did say that he's been talking to Miovski and he's happy with him, but I don't know. I think he'll probably be looking for a move in the summer unless we see something drastic in the next 8 games. But as much as he hasn't reached expectations, this is still a guy who knows where the back of the net is, and particularly this weekend against Aberdeen, where he's had a lot of abuse since making the move. I wouldn't be adverse to seeing maybe Trimiti getting a rest for the first 60 minutes of the game and trying Nadiri off Miovski and see if we can get the two of them a bit more involved.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a point the manager needs to have a look at, Jack. I think, probably the same as yourself, in that, I think we all, I'm sure Cammy will remember, early on in the season when we were having one of the pods when we'd signed Miovski, that we were all going, this is a striker that we needed in because he knows the league. He scored goals for fun for Aberdeen before he left, obviously a couple of years back, to go to Spain. Yes, it didn't work out particularly well for him at Girona last year, and that's why we got him for a slightly reduced price in the summer. And again, he's maybe just not fitted in to the structure under Russell Martin, and obviously certainly more so recently under Danny Rowe. But yeah, Billy, I'll come to you mate first, and let obviously come in afterwards. But what's your thoughts on allowing Miovski to kind of stake a claim up front and maybe take Trimiti out of the firing line, but giving him a rest, considering he has been pretty much 90 minutes more or less for the last few games.
Other than resting his legs, I don't see Danny Rule bringing Miovski in for him. Cards on the table. I really like Miovski as a finisher. He doesn't get involved enough, and I don't think we play the passes that he needs. But some of the finishes he makes are pretty delicious, to be honest. You see them and you think, that's a guy with a finishing brain. He's got instinct and he can do that. However, Danny Rule, he talks a lot about Naderi, and he talks about him like his guy and his project. He doesn't talk about Mio like that. And to pick up on something that CGM 55 was saying, I was interested in the presser. He's saying running around a lot isn't enough. Naderi has to show more. Danny Rule kind of touched on that in his presser, and he wasn't having a go at Naderi. What he said is he's been speaking to the team and his his teammates more about getting into positions for receiving or making diagonal passes and getting into the spaces to use Naderi. So I don't think at the moment Danny Rule, rightly or wrongly, time will tell. I don't think he sees Naderi as a problem. I think he sees him as a useful asset that he is still integrating into the team, and he thinks that the overall team's going to function better once the other players start getting the best out of Naderi. Miovski, he just doesn't, he doesn't talk about him like that. He'll be mentioned in passing, and you can see from the minutes that he just doesn't fancy Miovski, whether that's his form, whether it's just the how he fits into the system and the kind of runs he makes. I'm not entirely sure, but I thought it was interesting because I think a lot of us have had that sense that the Naderi looks like he's getting up to speed, that the effort's there, he's in and around things, but doesn't quite seem to be maybe getting on the end of things or influencing things in decisive moments the way we would like. Danny Rule seeing it a different way. He's seeing a guy bedding into the team who, once we get used to making the right movements and putting the right shapes around, is actually going to benefit the team. So I think he sticks with Naderi, and I think Miovski only comes in pretty much, like we've talked about, maybe Matondo, etc., as a competent professional footballer to fill a jersey when the other options aren't available. I just don't see him playing Miovski as part of a front two if he can avoid it. Just none of the evidence indicates he rates him.
Yeah, it certainly seems to have a soft spot for Nadiri. Again, I do feel he has shown promise in most of the games. I think he's just finding his feet after moving up, certainly at least one or two levels from the German third division to I say just British football in general. Cammy, I'll bring you in this one. Between Miovski and the Dairy, do you think the manager should try them as a 2? I know that there's again been posts to suggest that Naderi's kind of playing more as a kind of 10 in behind Chermiti to kind of help supply him. But do you think we should try and give them a chance to be out and out strikers together with himself and Miovski?
I just don't think the balance is there at this moment in time in the final third. I don't think the understandings are there. I'll echo what CGM says about playing in a team that creates nothing. I think we don't create enough quality. I don't think the understanding's there. I think Jack said about Chermiti and Nadiri, they don't, to me, look a pair, or whether it's one is a 9 and one is a 10. I think it's, for me, it's one or other, and then somebody sort of playing off sort of situation. But I just think the balance, the whole, it's just no functioning as it should. I mean, the game at Paisley last Sunday should have been far more comfortable. The amount of times that we got into transition positions and we just took the wrong touch, we took an extra touch, we didn't get a shot away, we didn't play somebody in. Just poor decision making. And I mean, Mikey Moore, I thought last Sunday could have probably bagged himself a hat trick. So I think all of the front players can do better. It's not just about, I think Mikey Moore gives us so much energy and so much directness, but he is still 18 and is still learning. Skov Olsen has just, it's been disappointing. So I think the hope was that Skov Olsen was going to come in and I think create far more chances and help create far more chances. So I said on a podcast many weeks ago, I think Haaland would struggle to play up front for us at times, because I just don't think we play to the centre. Whether we're playing Chris Boyd and Kenny Miller up front at their peak, we don't create enough chances for them. The understanding doesn't appear to be there at this moment in time between Nadiri and Chermiti. But I think that one of the strikers needs to play between the posts. That's, I mean, I want Super Ali 35 years ago playing between the posts. That's the sort of striker that I think everybody pines for. That player that is a number 9, fox in the box, can stick the ball in the back of the net, sniffs out, the movement's great. I don't see that with us at the moment, but there's so many factors in the way that Rangers are struggling to put teams away, is because we're not creating enough chances. And then when Chermiti, for example, gets the 100% chance that he did last Sunday, he puts it past the post. But how many shots, how many opportunities has Nadiri actually had in the games that he's played? I can't think he loads of missed chances. A recollection, he maybe had a header at Paisley last Sunday. I could be wrong. My view in the stadium wasn't the greatest, but somebody had a header at the back post. But it's not like he's came in and has missed 35 chances. He's no done Cyril Dessers this time last year, where Dessers scored 20 but missed another 40. I don't think we're creating as many chances as we even did this time last year. And I think that's a factor. We lost a lot of goals out of the team with Igaman, Cherny, Dessers, from chance creation and from output. I don't think we've replaced that as much as we are in contention to end the season well. The final third of the pitch is still a head scratcher for me, and I don't envy Danny Rule to try to, but as Roy Keane would say, that's his job, and it's up to Danny Rule to get the players functioning and winning the game starting tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I agree, Cammy. I think it certainly the focus in January for Rule was to kind of shore up more so the defence, and really to bring the creative element in with the Skov and Nadiri. I think that certainly the front end of the pitch will be something he'll be looking at, or like to think he'll be looking at come the summer window. Hopefully with I was going to say a new director of football. But I realise we're coming close to full time. I'll give a shout out to the 140 odd folk that are watching. Please like and subscribe on all our social platforms, but more especially on YouTube. It does really help us. I think in the WhatsApp group chat we have just made 12k followers on Facebook, so thank you very much for that. Every little like and subscribe does help us, and we are very grateful for your support. Before we wrap things up, I just want to ask the guys, is there anything else you want to cover in the new show? I think we've kind of covered as much as we can. Jack, I'll let you come in.
Not looking for a big discussion. Just want to congratulate John Brown, who I believe was just appointed to the board of Club 1872. I think that's a good appointment. Somebody with club best interest at heart, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Yeah, here, Jack. I think he's certainly the type of person. I know Billy, myself, Billy, Cammy, and yourself probably all do remember him to varying degrees in his playing days, and obviously his passionate role over the last few years, both within and out with the club roles that he's held. So yeah, that's certainly good news and a positive step for Club 1872 to have him appointed. I think with that was everything. Billy, Cammy, anything from yourselves?
Can I just chip in with two quick things? One is just a thought experiment, and a reason why we should have got rid of Thelwell for sure. Where would we be sitting in the league if we hadn't spent the money on Miofsky that we got for Dessers? That keeps me awake at night, as does the fact that we didn't sign Shankland when he was under our nose. Just to echo like what Jack was saying about John Brown, though, fantastic as a player, absolute stalwart during the Spiv era, and he's actually now made it non-contentious and legally okay to say, about referees corrupt. Well, I'm calling it corrupt because that's not me saying that. I'm quoting Bomber Brown. If you've got a problem, don't come to me, go to Bomber Brown, which you won't because he's Bomber Brown.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't mess with him even on a good day. Yeah, Cam, anything from yourself?
It's interesting, Jack. I've not actually picked up on the other names that have been, but I think guys like John Brown, our football club needs far more people like John Brown, Barry Ferguson. I saw Danny Rule had a lot of the ex-players at the training ground a couple of weeks ago, and I think it is recognised. So I know Club 1872 isn't directly linked to the club, but the more people that we have involved in the club that have the club's interests at heart, and John Brown 100% has Rangers' best interests at heart. The more people we have in the training ground at Ibrox on a Monday to Friday and on a match day that understand and can help influence and provide experience, great. But I'm interested to see just quickly how Club 1872, they've had a lot of deserved criticism over recent years. It's been very much it's a podcast in itself, to be honest with you, but I'm interested to see how they rebrand and how they take it moving forward and their engagement with the club and the plans for that. But yeah, delighted to see John Brown back involved, and I am absolutely delighted that we've nearly got to the end of this and we have not mentioned that manager that we had at the start of the season and the absolute nonsense that he was spouting earlier in the week. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to utter those words, and we'll just leave it at that, and we'll give our predictions for tomorrow's match, and then we can all go and enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, I think the less said about that, the better, Cammy. I certainly didn't want to make a note of it. Before we give our predictions, I'm just going to give a shout out to the Rangers Charity Foundation. They have a match day takeover day tomorrow for the game against Aberdeen. So if you are going, please give generously if you can to the Charity Foundation. They do excellent work both within the club and out within the community. So yeah, please look out for them, and if you can donate, then please donate as much as you can. It would be very much appreciated. With that being said, in the last minutes or dying embers of this pod, I'll reach out to Jack to give your predictions for tomorrow afternoon's game.
Aberdeen aren't great. I know they've got a new manager, but I don't think it'll be enough to give them the bounce. You know what Stephen Robinson will do? They'll come, they'll be in our face, they'll be stuffy, but I think we'll get a win. I'm going for a 2-0 Rangers win.
Glad to hear it. Billy, what's your prediction?
I think it's going to be not a fun watch, because I think he will get a bounce and he make them organised. But let's be honest, if we were looking at Hearts or Celtic playing Aberdeen, we would fancy them to take the 3 points. So we need to take the 3 points. I'm kind of a Jack. I think a 2-0 or a 3-1, and I'm just hoping in 8 games' time, CGM 55's having to change his livery and his name and everything because it's out of date.
Yeah, here. Last but not least, Cammy, what do you think the score will be tomorrow?
Firstly, I'm looking forward to the Charity Foundation, obviously taking Callum along to the game, and I'm looking forward to competing with him again against him and the beat the goalie. So I'm looking forward to that before the game tomorrow. But I think Rangers will win by a couple of goals. Jack's pretty much nailed it. They'll come, they'll be stodgy, they'll be structured, well organised. I think set pieces were a big factor when we beat them at Ibrox at the turn of the year. I think that's going to be a big issue tomorrow. I think tomorrow, hopefully, we get a goal back from the set pieces. And we never really spoke about it. I think it's going to be interesting to see who Danny Rule picks as his 2 in the middle of the park, because all 4 players are now available. So it'll be interesting. And again, that's we could sit here talking for another 20 minutes about preferences, but I think I'll go for Rangers to win 2-0 and Big Manny Fernandes to score the first goal.
I like to hear goal scorers as well. I think for me, it'll be just again same as you guys. I think it'll be 2 or 3 again. Hope for a clean sheet. I did just see that the club have announced that Raskin's been called up to the Belgium squad for the 2 friendlies that they've got as well. So hopefully he gets back into some form in the international break. Maybe Kevin De Bruyne can have a word with him and see if he can come back for the remaining games in a bit better form than he has been recently. But with that being said, we will wrap up today's pod. Again, thank you, Jack, Billy and Cammy, for joining us today. Please keep an eye out on our socials. We all have our pre-match and post-match pods tomorrow, before and after the game. And we'll obviously follow that up next week with more content for you to enjoy. With that being said, a last shout out to Bluebell's Bar in Lanzarote, Puerto del Carmen. Please reach out to Kenny and the team if you're over there for a nice cold drink, and hopefully a live Rangers match if you're there during the season. And also to the Etsy shop. QR code's in the corner. Please pick up yourself a piece of merch, just like I'm trying to model here. It is comfortable. So yeah, I'll just let you know. I may not be glamorous, but I'll tell you what the real deal is. But with that being said, every night is a Rangers Journal night. Again, thanks very much again for watching, and we'll catch you again tomorrow. Bye for now.
Every night is the Rangers Journal night.